All right, we're back. Boom. All of it. So, Aaron, as a producer and engineer that works with tons of different artists, what do you think is the biggest mistake commonly made with how artists invest their money into their music?
Ooh. Biggest mistake.
Down the rabbit hole we go.
I was gonna say that could be. Is there a particular facet you're looking at with this, or just general, like across the board?
I think this is the question that not enough artists are self-aware enough to ask. That coming to someone like you, who this is your bag, this is what you do professionally every day. You might be able to tell someone, here's where I see all the money being wasted. Here's what not to do. Here are the reasons that when we shut down the studio, we laugh about you and call you a joke, and you have no idea. Those are the reasons I'm looking for. What is the real nitty gritty behind the scenes? Y'all keep making the same mistakes over and over. And like, for example, one of them that I hear a lot, is mixing and mastering included aspect. So I don't know if you want to speak to that quickly, just that alone.
Yeah. Well, part of it, two things. Part of it is the only thing you can do, the only big mistake you can make worse than spending too much money on your project is not spending enough money on your project.
Write that down.
And
Take that down.
And that sounds like one of those, well, like, easy to say if you have any budget, but regardless of your budget, whether your budget is $200 for the whole project or $2,000, taking shortcuts in the final project is the one thing that's going to be your biggest mistake. So whether that's, and, don't get me wrong, I'm all for the do-it-yourself approach. If you, want to work on stuff at home, you have your own setup, great, good. But if there is legitimately a part of the process that you do not understand, whether that is the production or the mixing or the mastering aspect of it, get someone to do it. Get a professional to. If you are good at producing stuff and you can record some stuff at home and it sounds decent, great. But you don't really know anything about mixing and you're just slapping some plugins on and you're just sort of, doing whatever with it. It's not, that's not the place to cut corners, especially in your finished project, because that ultimately is going to be what people judge you on. And in today's day and age where technology is so cheap and accessible now with music, no one's the fact that you did it yourself is not going to be an excuse, and
People
it's not going to curve anyone's opinion to being like, oh, well, he did this all for $100. They're going to put this up against the project that costs $10,000 a song, and they're going to measure them the same way. And that, unfortunately, is the day and age we live in. But also, not to say that you have to spend $10,000 a song to get a great sounding product, but know where it is responsible to cut those corners. If there's something that legitimately you can handle on your own at home, great, go for it and do it. But if there's something that you don't have any idea what you're doing, you're watching YouTube videos trying to figure it out, probably best to bring probably best to bring somebody in who knows what they're doing, and ultimately probably even for less than you think it might be, can probably fix everything, make it sound 10 times better than you ever could, and it's going to send you out the door with a much better project to show people.
And also going with the cheap guy. The cheap guy's cheap for a reason. It might not be a bad reason. It often is. But there's always a reason. Like, there's someone else in the same community that we work in that is a way lower rate than we do. But we're in a facility, for example, the reason here is we're in a professional commercial space with overhead that is related to that. So if you want to have the environment where you can go into a nice space with somebody sitting at a front desk, coming in with the water, the coffee, everything you need, because it's a real business. And I mean that not in an offensive way, but in we're registered. You can find us somewhere, and you get all the protections and all the liability and everything that comes with that. All those perks that exist, whether you're thinking about them day to day or not, are all here. You are protected in that way, and there's recourse if something should ever go wrong. But you come in, you're dealing with professionals, because only professionals work here. And things of that nature, where you could go to somebody else and maybe they're cheaper, but why? Are you working in somebody's basement? The quality might not be there. And that's the thing too, that I'm not saying that like everyone who does this at home isn't qualified in a different way, but you just need to know what you're getting, because there's a lot of people that are not qualified, and those people are like, yeah, mixing mastering is included. Like, they probably don't really know what that is if they're saying that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that is not something that's ever faux free.
Right. No, I mean, that is the space thing aside. I mean, like, it's, if you have a friend who wants to handle something, is going to take care of something for you and give you a deal and is going to wrap up mixing and mastering or something in with it, that's one thing. But there's a lot of people who are running studios who, where they, run these crazy deals on the hours and stuff like that, and then they just don't have any idea what they're doing just because they simply threw a laptop and a couple of speakers in an old office cubicle somewhere. Even if they have a space, like I said, it might not even be that. They'll run these crazy deals where then it'll be, like the mixing and mastering is included. And, if you work that out with somebody who know who you're dealing with is ultimately, I guess, what the answer to that is. If you were working it out with somebody who legitimately knows what they're doing and you work out a deal with them that they're going to include the mixing and mastering, great. But if you're going with somebody you don't know strictly because they've included the mixing and mastering, and that is the selling point, is that it's like, oh, mixing and mastering for free, fantastic, look at this deal I'm getting, I can't afford not to work with them. That does not have, that should not be the reason that you choose to work with somebody over anyone else, or should be the expectation, because that's not the norm by any stretch of the imagination.
Another example of this too, and not going to name names, but I remember a story you told me about an artist that had come in for things that you had thrown in, and most professionals that if you come here and you work consistently, I think you can probably speak to this more. You hook people up when you're a real customer, a real client, a real artist that's serious about their music.
Sure.
Like someone like Aaron who really does this isn't really gonna nickel and dime you. He's gonna throw in extra things when he can to help you out. But when there's something that requires hours of additional time, there has to be a cost associated with somebody's time if you want to deal with a professional. That's how that works. You don't want to insult someone like Aaron, who then is going to be like, well, if that's all you want to pay, that's all the time you're going to get, especially in those final moments of your project. And I remember you told me a story about someone that didn't want to basically finish paying for the rest of his project, and the next thing you heard, I don't remember even how much later it was, but the project was basically up on iTunes unfinished.
I literally think it was almost 72 hours after.
So why does that happen? Why are these people not willing to finish paying for things at arguably the most important stage?
Sure. I think it kind of goes back to just a little bit of the, when you're afraid to spend too much on something, because I can completely understand budget this, you want to keep it cheap, whatever. But there are just certain times where, because that particular instance you're talking about, that we had done a vocal tracking session, and just as a courtesy, there was extra time at the end of the session, and so I went ahead and started sort of the editing and mixing process on the track. And I tend to work very quickly, and so it got to a very good sounding place very, very quickly. I mean, in just the remaining time we had left during, the few hours we had, and it was kind of, I think, a good enough session for them. But what sort of started is they wanted to have some revisions done to it and sort of finish out the mixing. And I was like, cool, like, happy to do it. But here's the thing, like, what you asked for to do it really and right is going to be probably, I'm going to have to recall the whole session, and it's probably going to be another couple of hours I'm gonna have to do. This isn't sort of like a, pull up a quick edit and just knock something up 2 dB and then like head out, save it and bounce it out. It's not that kind of change. And when that came down to it, that you mentioned, that was sort of like, whoa, well, it's just this little old thing. And I'm just sort of like, yeah, well, it's not a little old thing, just sort of like, and then they were like, cool, that's fine. And then next thing I know, it's unmastered, the mix isn't finished, and it's just released.
And see, now what bothers me besides like the no communication part of it, which, by the way, like, you do that and you don't communicate it, like, you're now a joke to us and to anyone else. I mean, anyone who's professionally doing this, if that's how you handle your business, we no longer believe you're someone solid to work with. And I can't refer you to anyone. And that specific person, people have asked me since then, just total random happenstance things. I've been asked about that person, my thoughts, and I generally, keep my business to myself. But there was nothing really positive that I could give as feedback because I had this experience with this person. I actually don't think they're as legit as I would have before I knew this information. So that's a problem. And beyond that, now the studio name and your name in particular is on a project that was released kind of like without your, not that you need consent, but.
Well, this is where the double-edged sort of the credits, the system of crediting things not being what it should be, where people don't get credit for things, is actually, it's a double-edged sword in this case, where, because that is a project I would not necessarily want my name on, and it's not on because, just people don't credit anything, and there's not really a good way to do that in a lot of situations, so that actually works out there. And, at the end of the day, this is a service industry, and so whatever you want to do, it's your choice. It's your choice. I can make a professional recommendation. At the end of the day, you do what you want to do. But again, I'm not going to rep that project and be like, this is a good example of what it happens when you work with me.
We'll actually use it as a what not to do.
Exactly. But that's not going to be something that's going to be in a portfolio somewhere. That's going to be, I'm going to feature, and be like, this is the kind of work that goes on here, because that's not it's not representative of it whatsoever. But, at the end of the day, you got to sleep in the bed you made. And if that is good enough for you, so be it. But I can tell you it's not good enough to make it in this industry. But.
And is there anything else as far as when people come in that genuinely want to do well and want to learn more that you see cutting corners in an area that they shouldn't? I mean, I know we talked mixing and mastering, like specifically in that process.
Particularly if we're talking
even beats. I know a lot of people.
I was gonna say we're talking the hip hop and the R&B kind of community. The beat selection thing is something that is, this happens all the way up the ladder too. Like, this is also like, there are major artists who are also falling into the same pitfall, but like, that's not a second thought thing. Like, when you're making a musical selection, invest some time. If you're not gonna invest money, invest time in it at least. Look for something that's of good quality in a file format that's of good quality, or the best that you can
not
obtain.
A YouTube link?
No. Ripping a YouTube instrumental is not. If you're looking for industry standard sound, that is not how you're going to get it.
Stop doing it.
But somebody out there is going to point to, whoa, so-and-so did it, and this track they got off YouTube. They did, but no one is pointing at those tracks as being sonically golden examples of what to do.
Also, they're probably like one out of the million. The other million were terrible and never saw the light of day, and you don't know about them for that reason. Like, you're talking about like the needle in a haystack that happened to make it, and it was like an accidental success.
It's the one case. This is the exceptions, not the rule here. So if you're, my recommendation on the topic of things not to cut your budget on, either link up with a producer who's also on the come up as well, who does good work, that you can sort of scratch my back, I'll scratch yours sort of situation, where you can get them maybe to produce something for you for cheap or for some sort of collaborative sort of arrangement. But don't just grab any old thing out there and be like, but my rhymes though, and my flow is going to just override the fact that this beat sounds like a dumpster fire.
Nothing fixes a dookie beat. Take that, write that down in your notebook too. Nothing fixes a dookie, D-O-O-K-I-E beat. Remember that. Take the time, educate yourself, or find someone that can help you, or a resource. That is like the name of the game for a lot of these things.
Facts.